At 2:14 on January 30th, 2026, in the southern Red Sea, the calm of the night was broken by a sharp alarm inside the Combat Information Center of the USS Delbert D. Black. On the AN/SPY-1D radar display, a digital storm was taking shape. 32 low-flying contacts appeared at once from the direction of Yemen's coastline, moving at high subsonic speed in complex crossing patterns the Aegis system had never seen before, all on a direct path toward the destroyer. As the combat system struggled to process the crowded target picture, an even more serious warning appeared high above. Two Fatah-2 missiles, described as Iran's newest hypersonic class threat, dropped toward the ship like streaks of fire. The commanding officer of the USS Delbert Black had only 45 seconds to make a decision that could change everything. How do you respond to a carefully built trap designed to overload the ship's defenses when missile inventory is limited and the opposing side may have prepared for this moment far in advance? In Washington, President Trump posted a warning that an immediate response was coming. But the real question was whether it would come fast enough to help the nearly 300 sailors aboard a destroyer isolated in open water. According to military intelligence sources cited after the event, this was not viewed as a sudden or random move. It reportedly matched CIA warnings issued 48 hours earlier. U.S. signals intelligence stations in the region had intercepted a sharp increase in communications between missile sites along Yemen's coast and the headquarters of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Pentagon analysts believed the arrival of a large U.S. naval force, including 10 warships recently reported in the area, may have pushed Iran to act first. The target appeared to be chosen with precision: the USS Delbert Black. The ship had moved separately from the main formation to carry out forward picket duty. For strategists in Washington, the message seemed obvious. The goal was to disrupt one of the fleet's most powerful radar platforms before the carrier group could fully organize its air and naval posture. It looked like a calculated opening move, timed to exploit the brief moment before the U.S. force had fully settled into combat position. What truly unsettled officers aboard the Delbert Black was not just the scale of the attack, but the method behind it. Radar data suggested a major shift in the technology being used. The Shahed drones were no longer following simple pre-programmed routes. U.S. sensors detected them exchanging data with one another and automatically changing formation whenever radar tracked them. Navy technical teams described it as an AI-driven swarm. The opposing side appeared to be building a layered picture of real and false targets, saturating the Aegis system with confusion and forcing it to sort threats under extreme pressure. The broader objective seemed clear. This was not only about causing damage through direct impact. It was also about forcing a $1.9 billion warship to spend tens of millions of dollars in advanced interceptors against low-cost drones, opening a path for the Fatah-2 missiles once the ship's missile cells were drained. If such a plan worked, the USS Delbert Black would become more than a ship under pressure. It would become a symbol of a serious challenge to U.S. deterrence in the Middle East. So here's the key question. With 32 targets incoming at once, can the U.S. Aegis shield really hold the line? There was no time for debate. In a moment of extreme pressure, the captain made the call no commander wants to make: hand control of the engagement to the ship's automated combat logic. Auto Special Mode was activated, turning the destroyer into a machine that could react faster than any human team. The deck shuddered as the forward and aft Mark 41 VLS cells opened at the same time. Seconds later, the night sky over the Red Sea lit up with vertical columns of fire. 12 ESSM missiles launched in rapid sequence, forming a medium-range defensive screen against the approaching drone swarm. Each carried a fragmentation warhead built to break apart lightly built aerial targets across a wide area. But the most critical contest was taking place higher in the atmosphere, where the two Fatah-2 warheads were descending fast. To stop them, the Aegis system turned to one of the Navy's most advanced interceptors, the SM-6 Dual 2. To maximize the chance of success, the system immediately launched 4 of them. In just a few seconds, around $20 million worth of missiles had been sent into the sky. Bright orange flashes lit the darkness as interceptors met their targets. Fragments from drones and incoming missiles fell into the sea like a rain of burning debris. One by one, the red marks on the radar screen disappeared. For the moment, the U.S. defense system had won the first exchange, showing the full reach of its technological edge. But the relief did not last long. Before the smoke had fully cleared, a cold warning appeared on the ammunition management display. Magazine depth critical. In only 3 minutes of combat, nearly 40% of the ship's main anti-air inventory was gone. This was exactly the scenario analysts had warned about for years. The Navy's most advanced surface combatant now looked like a heavyweight fighter who had thrown everything into the opening round and suddenly realized there was very little left for what came next. The trap of economic asymmetry had worked, and just as the ship entered its most vulnerable moment, the hull-mounted sonar detected strange high-pitched sounds moving through the water. A second wave was underway, and this time it was coming from the direction the Aegis system was least suited to handle. On the dark horizon, streaks of white foam tore across the sea at nearly 50 knots. The ship's electro-optical sensors quickly identified the threat. 20 unmanned explosive boats closing in like a fast-moving pack. They changed direction constantly and unpredictably, slipping around machine gun fire and turning the water around the ship into a chaotic, moving puzzle. At the same time, Iranian coastal radar stations shifted to continuous wave illumination and locked onto the Delbert Black. To U.S. crews, that meant one thing. They were guiding another weapon that long-range radar had failed to pick up in time. An AL-1 cruise missile, flying only 3 meters above the sea to stay hidden, suddenly appeared less than 10 kilometers away. The USS Delbert Black had fallen into a classic pincer setup. It had to focus downward to deal with the unmanned boats racing across the surface, while also watching for a cruise missile approaching from the side. The Phalanx CIWS, the ship's final close-in defense, spun up and began throwing out streams of 20mm rounds to build a wall of fire. But the limits of the system were now obvious. It could only focus in one direction at a time. As the gun turned toward one side to break apart one boat, another approach angle opened on the opposite side. The ship's missile inventory had already lost the weapons best suited for extremely short range, and using a multi-million-dollar interceptor against a low-cost explosive boat was not a realistic option. Then, in the middle of the confusion, one unmanned surface vessel slipped through the defensive fire and detonated just 50 meters off the port side. The blast sent tons of seawater crashing onto the deck. Electronics inside the command spaces flickered, and the aft radar temporarily lost signal. The billion-dollar destroyer shook hard, suddenly facing the possibility of being disabled, not by the most advanced systems, but by some of the simplest, the U.S. Navy's technological confidence was being tested in real time, and without an immediate change, the fate of the USS Delbert Black would be decided in seconds. With the ship's mechanical defenses hitting their physical limits and traditional ammunition no longer enough, the commanding officer activated a capability the other side may not have expected. Helios, the 60-plus kilowatt high-energy laser added during the ship's late 2025 upgrade. Unlike missiles or naval guns, Helios made no dramatic sound. It did not rely on propellant, and it introduced almost no delay. Most importantly, it struck at the speed of light. An invisible beam locked onto the optical sensors mounted on the bows of the incoming unmanned boats. In an instant, temperatures spiked. Camera lenses melted. Internal control electronics failed. Across the water, the scene changed almost instantly. Boats that had been charging forward suddenly lost direction, turned in circles, or drifted harmlessly. But the most critical target was still the cruise missile approaching at close range. Helios shifted aim in a fraction of a second, faster than any mechanical weapon could rotate. The concentrated beam burned into the missile's control surfaces and seeker. With its guidance compromised, the missile began to wobble, lost stability, and plunged into the sea just a few hundred meters from the ship, sending up a towering column of water. The $1.9 billion destroyer had survived through a dramatic last-second reversal. But even the best defensive system cannot remove the source of the danger. The launch platforms were still out there, hidden inland behind mountainous terrain and beyond the ship's radar horizon. If the United States waited for satellite confirmation, reports to the Pentagon, and a full command cycle, the launchers could be moved long before any response arrived. That is where a quieter but highly important U.S. Navy capability entered the picture. NIFC-CA, Naval Integrated Fire Control Counter-Air, roughly 400 miles to the north from the flight deck of the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln. two dark outlines of F-35C Lightning II fighters separated smoothly from their patrol group. The stealth jets kept their radars off, preserving a near-invisible profile as they slipped quietly toward the edge of hostile airspace. Relying on passive electro-optical systems instead of active emissions, the pilots picked up faint thermal traces left behind by the recently launched Fatah II systems. Through the secure Link 16 network, those signals were processed and translated into precise coordinates. Within moments, the data was relayed directly to the fire control systems aboard the USS Delbert Black. The response came instantly. The remaining VLS cells on the destroyer jolted open, and Tomahawk Block 5 cruise missiles surged into the night sky. As they climbed and leveled out, they continued receiving updated targeting data from the F-35s above, adjusting their paths in real time with pinpoint accuracy. Just 12 minutes after the launch command, deep inside a remote valley in southern Iran, the outcome was already decided. Missile units on the ground attempting to reposition their equipment had no time to react. The incoming Tomahawks descended in their final phase with extreme precision, striking with minimal deviation. A chain of controlled explosions followed, reducing advanced launch systems and supporting hardware to burning debris within seconds. Back on the water, the USS Delbert Black continued moving forward. Its port side showed signs of damage from the earlier blast, the outer coating scorched and blistered. The radar system required immediate servicing, and a large portion of its defensive inventory had already been used. Even so, the ship maintained its position. Then, on the horizon, massive silhouettes began to form. One by one, vessels from the U.S. fleet came into view. A group of 10 warships, led by the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln, entered the area and established a protective perimeter around the damaged destroyer. The events of that night ended quickly, but their impact carried far beyond the moment. What stood out was not just the exchange itself, but the way it unfolded, where coordination, data sharing, and speed of response played a defining role. The situation highlighted how modern conflict is shaped less by sheer firepower alone, and more by how fast information moves, how systems connect, and how precisely decisions are executed. And it reinforced a broader point. When warnings of immediate action are issued at the highest level, they are backed by systems designed to respond without delay. The bigger question now remains open. After seeing how this played out, would a similar move be attempted again? That's something the entire world is watching closely.